What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a bunch of the updates that Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader has received since Lex Imperialis launched last month or so. Now, normally I don't usually cover like every individual patch or anything, but the two major patches that have dropped since that DLC released have been, I would say, so substantial in what they have put out there that I thought that they were worth talking about and covering. And so we are ultimately going to break this down into two different patches, because that's kind of what we're talking about here. One that released all the way back on July 10th, and then the follow-up, the second one, released just yesterday from the time of this video on August 6th. Now, the July 10th patch was honestly very large, but a large bulk of that was, of course, responding to people's most immediate concerns following the release of the DLC. Just the kind of stuff that becomes apparent when you release something in full to the masses, and problems are exposed just through sheer number. But it also adds a bunch of just really great additions, specifically in regards to how the DLC plays out. So probably one of the more important changes here is that initially you would recruit Solomorn kind of more towards the later half of Act 2, which was a fair ways into the game if you're unaware. And so they altered that to make him more available earlier in the act. So basically you could just recruit the guy sooner. They also added more portraits for the Arbitrator origin, specifically with helmets on, and honestly just more portraits in general is nice. And definitely the bulk of this patch in terms of like the non-just straight up bug fixes is all of the reactivity and banter and changes to like familiars and stuff that I wanted to get into with this one. So a lot of this is actually kind of surprising to me in the sense that it fleshes out a lot of the DLC release content. So as an example, on the planet Thessera, which is part of the DLC, they added just all sorts of dialogues to the finale of that, extra options based on your conviction, interactions with like how the skills are calculated by, just your character in certain instances on that world, new lore interactables, new tiny cutscenes and character animations for specific things that happen on that planet. But even looking beyond just Thessera, they even added like reactivity to some of your familiars from the Overseer origin to the DLC, which were added by the DLC, mind you, but this allows those companions or familiars to be more reactive to things outside of the DLC. But some of the cooler elements of this patch as well were actually the stuff that they enhanced in terms of what the familiars could actually do. Both in terms of like tweaks to the abilities they already had, but they also added more protocols, and what protocols are basically equipables for your familiars. And there was kind of only a couple of them really when the actual DLC launched, but in this patch on July 10th, they added a bunch of protocols based on conviction, meaning that the morality of the character controlling that familiar would be taken into account when applying certain protocols to those familiars, kind of increasing the variety of what they had in terms of options for equipment. And I think the actual numbers here were 8 of them had new effects added, and then there were 4 new protocols added into the game as well. And then lastly for this patch, outside of course, bug fixes and things, were that they updated like visuals and animations on a lot of different items, down to like how certain characters were holding the shields that were added by this DLC. They also fixed some animations for a variety of different weapons as well, like the Vindicator Flamer was a big one. They also added in a lot of Arbites inspired equipment, mostly for the sake of looks. So all in all, that July 10th patch really was pretty big, and yet it's only one half of the things I want to talk about, because now we're talking about the patch that released just yesterday from the time of this video. This one is a little bit smaller, but still had a lot of really big stuff added. Namely, and probably most importantly, is the 20 new talents and features added to the Overseer archetypes in order to make it more synergistic with its either origins or your first tier archetype. So basically the things that could lead you into the Overseer archetype all had like specific talents and things like that added to the possibility in the Overseer tree to kind of just increase what they could do. which I have to imagine is in response to the fact that Overseer, while definitely a lot of interesting support options there, could feel a little lacking in things like damage options or even some utility depending on your exact setup. In addition to that, they added more reactivity and dialogue options, and seemingly unrelated, the Operative, one of the other archetypes, has a mechanic called exploits that would be consumed to have a variety of different effects, and this patch actually causes those to not be consumed when your attack is like dodged, parried, or blocked, as an example. In relation to all of the new talents and features for the Overseer, these can get a little bit granular. For instance, they actually added one of these that is only available to Pascal specifically because it causes his unique machine spirit communion. If you happen to also take the Servo Skull Swarm familiar with him, the Servo Skulls will duplicate machine spirit communion wherever they are when you use it, basically making that more effective if you pick up that talent. That was probably the most specific one that I saw. Others are like, if you're playing an Operative Overseer or an Officer Overseer. But there are some pretty interesting ones that should, I think, hopefully anyway, give the various Overseer combinations a little more oomph in terms of damage. For instance, warriors can turn their temporary hit points into just extra damage. Or they could pick up another one that causes every time they get attacked for their familiar to gain a bonus. Blade Dancer Overseers have the ability to cause their familiar to do like a lesser form of blade dance, which is really cool. So a pretty large variety and just different additions to the play styles there for the Overseer, which I always like to see. In addition to that, I would say the rest of this patch is actually a little on the minor side, but in combination with the first one is a pretty substantial amount of updates since the DLC's initial launch. But for instance, other changes in this were like they added a unique cloak to pretty close to the end of the Lex Imperialis expansion on an orbital station. Don't want to say exactly what's going on there because it's a spoiler, but if you know roughly where the orbital station is, you'll know what I'm referring to. But that is pretty much all the major stuff to know about these individual updates. Now, the reason I wanted to cover these is because given how the next two DLCs, which have been announced, aren't due out until like early to late summer 2026, I'm expecting Rogue Trader to be a little quiet for the foreseeable future outside of course, maybe one or two patches here or there. But nonetheless, Rogue Trader is getting better all the time, though I do think these first two DLCs will be particularly hard to top, but at the very least, I'm looking forward to seeing what they do in terms of the two new companions that will be coming with the upcoming DLCs. In the meantime, though, that's pretty much all I've got for this particular video, so I hope you enjoyed it. By all means, let me know what you think about these changes down in the comment section below, which of course means to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.